Hello and welcome to this quick Pro Tools tutorial with me, Steve. I'm going to rattle through this as fast as I can, so as we're going through, please feel free to pause and replay anything that you need. So first of all, we're going to talk about moving around, playing and stopping in Pro Tools. The easiest way to play is to simply hit your spacebar and then this playhead, which shows where you are playing back, will start to move. To stop this, you can then just hit the spacebar again and that will stop. Now, you also have the option of using the transport controls up here, which sits in this floating window. If you don't have this floating window, I will show you where to find it. So you click onto Window and then you click onto Transport. Now, there was also a variation of this bar sat underneath on the top of the edit window, but I usually find it helpful to have this floating window instead. So again, Windows and Transport will show you where that is. So you can hit play and stop within this. You can also use a few different controls to change you to different places. If you hit the return to 0, then your playhead will jump all the way back to the beginning of your session. If you hit go to end, then the playhead will jump right to the end of your session. You can also use these fast forward and rewind buttons to jump backwards and forwards in the track. In the top left hand side of Pro Tools, there are lots of buttons and some of them are important to this playback, so I will talk you through a few of these just now. So first of all, this is a button called Insertion Follows Playback. I will show you what this does. So note at the moment that the playhead is just after the beginning of this sort of drum intro. So if I hit play, this is with Insertion Follows Playback on. Note what happens. So it's playing, and then if I stop, note that the playhead has jumped to the place that I stopped. If I do that again and then stop, you see the playhead has continued on from where I stopped. Now if I turn this off and play, watch what happens. And then stop. The playhead has jumped back to the same place that I started it from before. So this is a useful button to know where it is and to know how to use it, because very often through a track you might sometimes want to listen to the track bit by bit and continue to work your way through, and other times you might want to listen to the same piece again and again and again. So this is a useful button for that. The next button I want to show you is this link, timeline and edit selection. Now for me, I always have this on and I will show you what it does. Now at the moment, if I make an edit or make a selection like this, I'll show you what I did in a bit. If I make a selection like this and hit play, then Pro Tools will play within that edit selection that I've made. If I switch this button off and make an edit or a selection, then Pro Tools will not play back the piece that I am trying to work on. So if you want to listen to the bit of the track that you're working on, make sure that you keep this link, timeline and edit selection switched on. So the next thing I want to show you is the Pro Tools edit modes, and these are listed up in the very top left hand corner, this shuffle, spot, slip and grid. First of all, I'm going to show you slip. Now what I can do with slip on is I can make a selection at any point in the timeline and drag it to any point within the timeline. So I'll show you what I mean. So this is the timeline up here. If I click at any point and drag to any point, then you can see that I can very smoothly grab any point that I want. Now with grid on, so if I change this to grid, watch what happens. So now what will happen is the timeline selection will jump from one point on the grid to another point on the grid. So up our grid at the moment is selected to bars and beats. We can actually change this to time code, minutes or seconds, but bars and beats is very useful when music is recorded to click tracks, for example. So with grid selected on, I can make an edit at any point and it will jump from one beat to the next beat. The next one I'm going to show you is this shuffle mode. Now, shuffle mode is not that useful for music generally, but I'll show you what it does. Let's pretend this is a speech track or something and there is a sentence that you want to remove. If you click and highlight the area of speech that you want, so let's say a sentence that you don't like, and delete it, the audio behind will jump up to fill the gap. So if we wanted to remove this sentence, for example, and we delete it, the audio behind will jump up. So not that useful for music, but very useful for editing speech or podcasts, things like that. And the final one to show you is the spot mode. With spot mode selected, this will allow you to place an audio clip at any specific point on the timeline. Again, possibly not that useful for music, but if you're doing something like editing sound effects for a video, then it's very useful. Let's say that you have an explosion that goes off at 1 minute 36 seconds, and this is your explosion clip. What you can do is, using this, you can place it at exactly 1 minute and 36 seconds, and it will jump to that point. There's actually one more I'm going to show you, which is within the grid. So let's say that we have got this sentence here that starts not on the beat but just before, and we want to copy it to somewhere else. So we've got this sentence, and we want this sentence to be moved to somewhere else, but we still want it to stay in time with the music. But this clip, this audio clip, you can see this line here to indicate it. This clip does not start on the grid. You see it is between the 2 points. If I change this drop down from grid to relative grid and then move this clip, it will move to a point between other grids on the timeline, but it will maintain its relationship to the grid. So if I pop that back, Command and Z. So to show you, this clip starts roughly 368 samples after 368 samples after the grid. But if I move this within relative grid, it will stay 364 samples behind the grid. But most of the time you'll want this either just on slip or on grid. I want to talk to you now about the tools that are available for doing your edits and moving things around, stuff like that. And the first one I'm going to bring your attention to is up in the left hand side. It's nice and easy to see. It is this picture of a hand. Now if we select this hand, then what we have here is a grabber tool, and I will show you what the grabber does. With the grabber selected, you can hover your mouse over any audio clip and click, and it will select that full clip. Now with that you could do various things, like you could delete it by hitting the backspace button, or you could move it backwards and forwards, or shift it down between different tracks, whatever you want to do with it. Now the next one is this one next to it. This is called the selector tool. So this is the one that's got a little waveform in the picture, with one with inverted colours in the middle bit. Now with this selected, the tool changes to this little eye symbol, this little selector symbol. And with this, we can click and drag in any clip and highlight a particular area, select a particular area of the track. We can do that either in one track at a time, or if we click and drag over multiple, then we can do that together. From there, we can either split the clip individually, which we'll come back to, I'll show you that again later on, or we can, for example, just like delete a particular piece of the timeline. The next one next to it is called the trim tool. So with the trim tool selected, if you are on the left-hand side of an audio clip, then you see that it has this little horseshoe shape that points towards the right, and if we go to the right hand side, it's got the horseshoe shape that points towards the left. So what we can do is we can actually drag in and out, or trim in and out, the beginnings and ends of our clips with this one. Over the top of these three tools that I've shown you, there is this bracket, and this is very clever. If I click on this bracket, then what this becomes is the smart tool. Now, the function of the mouse will change depending on where in an audio region, you hover it. So I will show you. If you hover in the bottom half of an audio region, then you will have a grabber tool selected. If you hover in the top side of an audio clip, then it changes to a selector tool. And if you go to the right hand side or the left hand side, it will become a trim tool. But it also gives you one more function, which is very, very clever. If you push your mouse cursor up to the top left hand side or the top right hand side, it changes to this little square with the two triangles on it. This becomes our fade tool. So if we click and drag now, this is going to add a fade in and a fade out to our track. So you can see by this line indicates a volume change. So in this side, it's going to get gradually louder, and in this side, it's going to get gradually quieter. The next button is this scrubber tool, this picture of a wee speaker. And if you click on that and slide your cursor across an audio clip, it will play that back at the specific point underneath your cursor. This is very helpful for finding particular points. Let's say there's a little click or a pop or something that you're trying to find. This will help you do that. To the right of that, we have the pencil tool, which is used for drawing in information. For example, drawing in information for Pro Tools to follow back automatically, something that we call automation. So we can draw in volume changes and things, but don't worry about that just now. And finally, the magnifier, the zoomer. With that selected, if we click onto the timeline, then we will simply zoom in. If you want to zoom back out, if you hold the Alt key and then click, then it will do the exact opposite. Most of the time, you will want your Pro Tools selected to this Smart tool, most likely. So how do we edit our audio clips? Well, I will show you through some of these techniques, some of which we've looked at briefly, but we'll go over them again. So to trim the beginning and end of a clip, then we simply would push our mouse to the right hand side or to the left hand side of the clip, and the trimmer tool will allow you to move this in and out by clicking and dragging. If we want to split the clip, then what we can do is we can make a selection by clicking in the top half. You see that adds this line, or by clicking and dragging, and then hitting Command and E. That will now split this selected clip up into 3 separate regions. So that was by clicking and dragging. If we, however, have just undone that, if we, however, just have a single point of selection and hit Command and E, then that will split these up into 2 different sections. We can now move these sections around wherever we want them individually or together by using the grabber tool. So we can move them either backwards and forwards, or we can move them up and down on tracks. Pop that back. We also have the ability to copy audio clips. So if I have this clip that I want to make a copy of, there are a few different ways we can do this. First of all, I can copy and paste using Command and C. Click where we want it and and then click Command and V, and it will paste it where we want it. There's also another way. Let's say that I want to take this little bit. What I can do is I can click on it, I can hold the Alt key and then drag the audio region, and it will make a copy of that. So if I hold down Alt and keep clicking and dragging, then it will make as many different copies of it as I want. Fading in and out of tracks, again, you can click at the beginning or end of the region up in the top or right hand corner, and it will allow you to fade in and out. But let's say you want one audio clip to fade into another. So let's say that we have this this guitar that you want to fade into this overhead channel from the drum kit. I don't know why you'd want to do that, but let's say you did. Now, if you have these 2 clips side by side, if you click and drag from one over to the other, we have a selection across both, and then hit Command and F, it will bring up this crossfade menu. If we then hit OK, then you can see what's going to happen is this track is going to fade from the cymbal into the acoustic guitar following those lines. Now, if we want to edit lots of tracks together, then there's quite a simple way that we can do this. So let's say, for example, we want to edit a whole drum kit made of lots of different tracks. If we select our full drum kit, so here I've got from the kick drum, so I'm going to select the track in the left hand side by clicking on its name. I'm going to find the end of the drum kit, which in this case is going to be number 11 ride. If I hit shift and then click onto it, I have now selected all of these tracks together. In the left hand side at the bottom of the screen, there is this option to set up groups. Now, if you can't see this, then there is a little arrow at the bottom left that will allow you to expand and close this box. So with this open, under groups, we can hit the little downwards arrow and click onto new group. So this is going to create a new group with our currently selected tracks listed down here on the right here. So we can call this drums and hit enter. Now, if I try to make an edit in any one of these drum tracks, it is going to make the same edit to the rest of the drums. So you see the drums are all there. I'm going to make the same edit in all of those drums. But just something to note, by default, an edit group will also set up what we call a mix group. So on the other screen, on the mix screen, which you get to by hitting Command and plus, or by clicking Window and then Mix, with this group switched on, if I try to change the level of the kick drum, it will change the level of the entire drum kit. If I want to do that separately, I just have to turn the group back off by clicking on its name, and I can now change those individually again. I'm going to go back to the edit window now, and finally what I want to show you is how you can export your audio once you are finished. So this is a multi-track project. This is a multi-track. It's got lots of individual audio files, but if we want to listen to this in iTunes or on Media Player or on an MP3 player or whatever, we need to combine these tracks down into a single file that we can listen to. So what we're going to do is we're going to find the end of the track, which in this case is going to be after this little fade out on the bass here. We're going to find the end of the track. We are going to click and then we can drag. So we're going to click in the top of the timeline here, and we can now drag back to the beginning of the track, and let's see where it starts. So this song starts with the guitar here. You can see the guitar at the beginning of the audio wave there. So we have got this selection. You see that in the timeline it is gone now grey. To export this, we're actually going to use a way that in Pro Tools we would call a bounce. So we're going to go to File, and we're going to go to Bounce to Disk. Now there's a few different options in here to make you aware of. First of all, the bounce source. So you want to make sure this is set to whatever your output is. So if you're listening through the speakers built into your laptop, you would want to make sure this is built-in output. If you are listening through a sound card or an audio interface, then you'd want to make sure this is selected as your audio interface. You have the option of changing your file type. WAV is the sort of standard high quality audio file that you have. You have a few different settings here for the quality of the audio. You have the sample rate and the bit depth. Something just to be aware of, something that might trip you up, is this one that says file format. Now, there's a few different here. Mono summed will mean that you have the left hand side of your track and the right hand side of your track pasted on top of each other. You generally don't want this. Multiple mono will give you separate files, one for your left hand side and one for your right hand side. You generally don't want that. What you probably want is this interleaved, which will just give you a stereo file. You can then choose where you want to put it and then hit bounce, and then that will give you into your Finder or into your documents the track for you to listen to or email or put on an MP3 player, whatever you want to do with it.